Good evening and welcome back to our virtual Dominion Energy Jazz Cafe. We're in for another night of music, some like I don't think we've had yet on this program, and we're excited to share that with you. And to do that, we welcome the Taylor Barnett Quartet.
Welcome, everyone. Thanks for checking this out, wherever and whenever you are. We are the Taylor Barnett Quartet. It's Marcus Tenney on the tenor saxophone, Devonne Harris on drums, and Cameron Ralston on the bass. Thanks for taking the time to listen to us. That tune was called Suspended Before the Steps. That was a piece of mine, as will all but one of the tunes tonight. Not sure, am I looking at you? All right, great. The next tune is called For Kenny. It's so titled as a dedication to Kenny Wheeler, the great Canadian-born but British associated trumpeter and flugelhorn player and composer and band leader. So, for Kenny Wheeler. So that one was for Kenny Wheeler. Next one is the one cover tune we're going to play tonight. This is a piece by John Zorn, who's a great American composer. He's kind of associated with the downtown scene in New York City. Kind of a legendary band leader, composer, saxophonist, record label owner. And his record label, Tzaddik, called Radical Jewish Culture, I believe, is the kind of subtitle. And he had the idea of taking his background as a Jew and the music that he grew up hearing, and then also combining it with kind of modern sort of avant-garde jazz in the kind of mold of Ornette Coleman. And so this is kind of a best of both worlds type of thing. So this piece is entitled Paran. It's by John Zorn. So that was Paran by John Zorn. Next up, we have another composition of mine entitled Red Lines. I wrote this back in 2017. There was much discussion in the zeitgeist about drawing a red line, and it was, I think, at that time it was related to chemical warfare in Syria. But the idea of drawing a red line, and I was thinking of all the ironic and tragic show. All right, little blues. All right. Yeah, 2 for 1. All right, we're going to play one more on this set. Again, you're listening to Marcus Tenney on the tenor saxophone, Devonne Harris, DJ Harrison on the drums, Cameron Ralston on the bass. My name is Taylor Barnett on trumpet and flugelhorn and compositions. We're going to play one more. This is a piece of mine. It's a blues entitled 2 for 1. It happens to be the name of the album that this band recorded, so I will probably put somewhere in the comments of this video a link to where you can buy that record. So check it out. We're talking to people in the future right now. It's crazy. A 1, a 2, a 1, a 2.
Taylor Barnett Quartet. You know, it's something when I'm just sitting in the audience trying to learn from everything I'm hearing. Up here having fun tonight. Sometimes some of y'all at home claim that what I'm giving you is not jazz. You can't say that about about these four back here. And I've got to learn more about your compositions. Taylor, would you join me for a conversation?
Sure.
All right, Taylor, thank you so much for that first set of music. I'm really fascinated by the way you play and by what you're playing tonight. Before we get into a conversation about all of that, would you take a moment to tell the audience something about yourself in your own words?
Sure. At my heart, I think I'm a teacher, and it's what I do for my living. But also during the summer when I'm, not in the classroom, it's what I walk around my house finding things to teach, finding people to teach. So sometimes my daughters are like, "Can't wait for the semester to start," so they'll stop teaching us all day. Hey, do you want to know how that works? So, I kind of approach talking to the audience a little bit like that, and even working with the band, you're teaching them your own compositions, so yeah, it's a big way about how I interface with the world, I think.
Well, I got to witness a lot of that tonight, and I have been telling you how fascinating I found it watching you lead your band. What led you to the world of music way back when to begin with?
My dad's a musician, and so he plays guitar and some piano, and he sings, and he would often have friends over to jam and play a lot of folk and John Denver and Bob Dylan, Beatles and that kind of stuff. And so very early memories of just being amazed at him playing with his friends and just thinking it was the coolest thing. I remember kind of just laying on the ground, laying underneath the piano. Actually, we had a grand piano, and so really kind of a core memory there of that feeling. And then I just, as I listened to music as a child, I remember kind of feeling like, especially if I'd put headphones on and listen to it, it felt like you were kind of entering this little world,
Yeah.
And it's like a little world, but once you crawl inside, it's actually, there's a lot there, and so as I got older and started to play music in school, and especially once I was exposed to jazz and kind of improvised music, I was like, well, this is a world that you kind of make. It's partly made, and then you kind of finish it and try different things, and I was like, this is amazing.
Is that what brings you to jazz? What keeps you here? The improvisation, creating a new world.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's always like that freedom or that experimentation is always like it's a yin and yang kind of thing. And so finding ways to, as a composer, to create structures within which people can be creative, and that is, the guys and I were talking about that, afterwards, and, after the gig just now, or after the first set, and then the same thing as a, as a player too, that like to navigate the form that's there and kind of learn to hear something new that fits within that structure. And that to me is like an endlessly fascinating balance that between freedom and structure, or chaos and order, or whatever.
Wow. I had earlier, when you arrived, I was having a conversation with some people, led me through a little spiritual walk. And I feel like I'm still on that journey listening to you tonight. And what you've just said about the balance between what you're doing. How would you describe your music?
For someone who hasn't, heard it, I would just describe it as, it is essentially rooted in the jazz tradition. So that's probably the best descriptor, even though we range pretty far, from the fringes of that. I think still our basic aesthetic approach to it kind of fits within that within the jazz tradition. So if you think about like, Jelly Roll Morton often described, jazz as like it's a way of doing it. It's not like a style of music, it's like an approach to the music. And so you can kind of like do jazz to anything, And so Miles Davis would do it to a Cole Porter standard, a pop tune, and so we could do it now to a pop tune, or you could do it to a folky kind of sound, or a funky sound, or a modern classical, dissonant kind of thing. And so you can do that process to these different styles, and so it still is basically jazz, even if the grooves and the melodies and the things kind of range out from that.
A lot of motion in your music, I would say. The lines that we're hearing from Cameron never seem to stop. They keep going. Certainly what the horns are offering, and the drums as well. They keep moving, and sometimes in contrapuntal rhythmic patterns. How do you stay together with all of the change going on around you if you're rooting this in learning new sounds as you're going and improvising? How does it stay together?
Yeah, well, when it stays together, no. It usually, that's why we were joking that like that my music can be difficult to play and to execute. And it's fun to play difficult music, but there's a kind of difficulty that's fun, and there's a kind of difficulty that's not fun. So my hope is that this is like a challenge in the same way that if you were to go see some really proficient basketball players, like, kind of jamming and playing on the court, that like it's both difficult, but also like it's the fun kind. So the way we keep our place and kind of maintain that structure is everyone has internalized both, of course, the beat and the meter we're in, but also the form of the music. And so there is, for all these tunes, there is some kind of a structure, and it's usually something that's a repeated structure. And it might only be like just a 4-bar kind of vamp, or it might be a whole form of a song that repeats. But whatever that is, everyone is hearing that running like a track underneath them. And so no one is really relying upon each other necessarily to give us the kind of the roadmap or the mile markers along the way. Everyone is very aware of where they are at the same time that they're improvising and listening to what other people are playing. And so when you put it like that, it's actually extremely difficult, and it requires so much practice. Most people would just not. Most people wouldn't find it to be worth it, honestly, just because it requires years and years of learning to play on simple forms first, and then being able to play on more complex forms. And so you're both improvising and keeping track of how many bars, what the chord progression is, what the melody of the tune was, and oh, so-and-so, the bass played something, I could respond to that, or I'm going to leave a little bit of space, and then the drums hear that I've left space, and so Devonne might play a fill to
Right.
like a good conversationalist. So
I'm being fascinated watching the conversation between the instruments and the way I think you're using them in composition. I mean, to use to play duet between trumpet and bass while the saxophone is really soloing with the drums going by. It's been great. I mean, I couldn't have performed with you tonight. And you say it takes a long time to get there. That's definitely a skill I don't have that I'd like to acquire. Your education must have been something remarkable. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I have kind of an embarrassment of riches as far as my education background. And so my first kind of great music teacher was in high school. My high school band director, Greg Thomas, from Albemarle High School in Charlottesville, and he's a very good musician and a truly great teacher. Like he really, it's like watching these guys play their instruments. To watch him run a band, and so that was a big part of my background, and kind of everything flowed from that. So through him, I met John Dirth, who's a great trumpeter and composer and band leader in Charlottesville. He was the first like world-class jazz and creative musician I'd ever been around, and it's really something. So to be a 15-year-old and to see someone and be able to say like that, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to be like that. And so I studied with him starting when I was about 15. He kind of took me under his wing and was just really generous. So he let me ride in his car, drove me here to Richmond, and I got to hear him rehearse with a big band here, a professional big band, and we're in the car, and he's like telling me about Woody Shaw and Freddie Hubbard and playing solos and singing them for me, and just talking about his time in New York City. And so John Dirth was one, and then through him, I got introduced to Doug Richards, who had founded and was running the jazz studies program at VCU.
Okay.
And once I was there, and got to see that program, I was like, well, that's where I want to be. And so that's where I did my bachelor's and master's, and that's actually where I teach now. So I teach full time at VCU. I'm the coordinator of musicianship studies, meaning I kind of coordinate and help write the curriculum and oversee all the music theory and ear training classes. And then I also teach jazz composition and arranging, which Doug Richards, who was kind of my mentor at VCU, that was his role. So he's a great composer for big band, and so and so I stayed with him. And I later on, after several years of teaching adjunct, went on to get my doctorate at JMU, and so did my doctorate in classical trumpet and pedagogy there.
Boy.
And so so now after all that kind of formal schooling, I've also had the pleasure of learning on the bandstand with some really great musicians.
Well, hats off to you, Doctor.
Yeah.
In the room.
Yeah.
Sometimes he will call me doctor or professor, but they're just being kind, I think. The horns you're playing tonight, tell me something about them. What's significant and how are they different?
Yeah, so I play trumpet on most of the tunes, and that is the trumpet looks a lot older than it really is. It looks like you buried it in the backyard for a season, but it's just on lacquered brass. And then the other instrument was a flugelhorn. And the flugelhorn is pitched just like a trumpet and plays basically the same. If you can play the trumpet, you can play the flugelhorn to a certain degree. The flugelhorn is shaped differently, so it's both wrapped differently, and then the shape of the tubing is what's called conical, meaning it starts narrow and flares very gradually the entire way, like a cone. Trumpet is a cylindrical bore, meaning it doesn't really flare until it gets to the bell.
Right.
And the difference is trumpet is a much brighter, more compact, and more projecting sound, and the flugelhorn has got that rich and mellow kind of sound. And so it's kind of the yin and yang of that member of the brass family in that soprano realm. So you can play the flugel very gently and kind of smoothly, and the trumpet's good for articulating and kind of well, for trumpeting.
For trumpeting. I like that. Now, as a composer, how do you approach the music, or do you approach the music differently when you're composing for either instrument?
Oh yeah, not too much differently. There are some kinds of tunes that lend themselves better to flugel, and so if I'm writing a song like we played on the first set for Kenny, that one's kind of more lyrical, and it's this kind of broad waltz feel. So I felt like that was kind of fit better on the flugel. But there are tunes that sometimes I'll play them on trumpet, and sometimes I'll play them on flugelhorn.
When you're writing, are you thinking about that these will be played on the horn? I ask because sometimes the motifs I'm hearing, really when the horns are playing in duet, feel like song, feel like I'm singing them. Your father was a singer. I wonder if that influences.
Thank you, and from a singer, that's I appreciate that. That's what I would be what I'm going for. I mean, in a lot of ways, well, in every way, voice is everyone's first instrument, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, you know, all musicians should sing. I mean, all musicians are singers, in my opinion, whether or not they sing publicly or not.
Right.
And so, yeah, everything starts off with the voice for me. And so when I'm composing, it needs to kind of sing, and then you can usually if you can sing it, you can play it. As many of my teachers said, but Doug Richards in particular used to say, you know, "Baby, if you can't sing it, you can't play it."
I like that. I like that. I mean, obviously, as a singer, that's paramount for me. I'm a conductor also. Watching you lead is not the way I would conduct an orchestra, but why would you in a group like this? But to watch signals that you are giving out, to listen to you call out things like the A section or the B section or a half tone apart. I love it when I get to hear musicians talk. I don't get to have conversations with musicians often, but to hear the terms come out so fluidly, I think it accented that you obviously are an educator and well-educated yourself. You mentioned that it takes quite a long time to learn how to do what you've done tonight. We're coming out of a pandemic. How did the four of you stay so well connected?
Yeah, so this is the first time this band has played since the before times. I know we played a gig in February of 2020. I remember that. It was one of the last handful of gigs I'd played before things shut down. So everyone here has played some gigs in the last month or two, but mostly it's been practice and then recording. And so we have. Yeah, I've played in a big band virtually with Marcus a couple times. You get sent the track, you lay your thing down at home, so the Randazzo big band is the group, and which is amazing. And Andy Randazzo, who makes these amazing videos too. So we've collaborated in that way, but it's mostly practice, and the pandemic was a very hard time for I remembering all my brass playing friends because. You have to keep practicing, or if I stop practicing for a month, I mean, I would be able to come back from that, but it would be months of coming back.
These muscles need to work.
They do, yeah, and so it's both physical, but then also mental. So I mean, I spend time improvising and playing with a metronome and trying to keep my place in the form almost every day. Well, definitely every day, but sometimes hours a day, just to be able to respond in the moment, to be able to keep that form going in my head while I'm trying to figure out, is Marcus going to play another chorus, or is he wrapping up and I need to cue the next section, and all those kinds of things you actually have to practice. And so I practice still a couple hours a day, pretty much every day for the pandemic without a single performance, and it was.
Boy.
I mean, it was actually quite a challenge because you both are practicing and have no thing you're practicing for except knowing that eventually I'm going to be really glad I did this because the gig's going to come, and it's not going to come 8 weeks in the future. It's going to come in a couple weeks, and I won't have time to get these skills and the endurance in my face muscles back. And so it was like it took a lot of discipline, and I think everyone here has their own, all the musicians in the band have their own version of that story of like how they created little projects, a little recording thing for themselves, or just anything to keep themselves musically active, both for the enjoyment and the kind of the expressive need that we have, but also just from a technique and and fundamentals standpoint that like we need to be able to do this at some point in the future. We don't know when, and so we got to kind of try and stay ready.
Oh, there's something very beautiful about that. I mean, I'm thinking about the amount of work, practicing hours a day with no gig in mind. That is, I don't know, beautiful and devastating at the same time.
Yeah, I'm laughing now, but like only to keep from crying, because it's like I'm a very disciplined person, and so I think I got about 6 months through the pandemic, and that part wasn't actually as hard. The first 6 months I was practicing still, and then when it was like became clear we're not even close.
Right.
I was like trying to figure out, well, how much is the least amount I could play a day and still like be kind of maintaining. And so I would, there was a few weeks where I told myself, I'm just going to play if I feel like it, and if I don't feel like it, I'm not going to play, and try not to like worry about, well, what's that going to mean 6 months from now. And so I have a few weeks off like that, and then I kind of felt a little more rejuvenated and started practicing more diligently. So other than a couple weeks or so in there, I basically have been just my daughters hear a lot of solo trumpet concerts at home. Let's put it that way.
Well, they're getting quite an education out of it. I gotta imagine.
Yeah, I think a lot of it they it's like if you live next to the train tracks, you don't notice the train anymore. I think a lot of it they probably don't even notice it.
Probably not. My mother sang us awake in the morning and sang us to sleep at night, and by I don't know, I guess to stop noticing all the singing, I find myself singing around town just by myself. I must look like a crazy person.
No, it's beautiful.
I relate to laughing to keep yourself from crying as a singer. I thought, am I ever going to be able to be who I am again? Am I ever going to be in a room with other singers and putting together some great masterwork? I didn't know. As a horn player, I would think the same thing. A lot of breath goes into what you do. It must have been very uncertain, I think. I'm glad it's ending so that we can get back to what we love. We have a second set of music I've got to get out of you, Doctor. If you don't mind, would you take the stage, join the gentlemen?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hey y'all, welcome back. That one was an original of mine. Was entitled Monastery of Self-Righteousness. In my mind at the time, I was dedicating it to a little place called twitter.com, but I suppose it works for really any of the social media outlets. We're going to continue with some more original music, but before we do, let me reintroduce the band. It's Marcus Tenney, Devonne Harris, and Cameron Ralston, and I'm Taylor Barnett. The next tune is entitled For Now. All right, we're going to play another original of mine. This next piece is entitled Windswept. I normally try and take a vacation every year and go with my family to the beach. And when I do, I try not to work too much, but sometimes the beach is the only time I have space to actually do something creative. So even though music is my vocation, it's also my avocation. So so the last tune, For Now and Windswept, were both written on the same beach week vacation when I think I found a quiet time when people were napping or something and wrote these. So this one was inspired, Windswept was inspired just by all the whipping winds and the peaceful time on the beach, you know, in the evening, maybe at the sunset. So you can picture that in your mind as you hear. right, y'all. If you've made it this far, congratulations. We got one more for you. This last tune is entitled "Remember the Future." It can mean a lot of things, but one of the things we as musicians are always doing is trying to come up with something new that's grounded in something. So when we want to know what the future is, we gotta think back from where we came. So anyway, one last time, Marcus Tenney, tennis shoe on saxophone, Devonne Harris, DJ Harrison on drums, Cameron Ralston on the upright and electric bass, and Taylor Barnett on the trumpet, flugelhorn, and compositions. Thanks y'all for listening, and thanks to the VMFA and Richmond Jazz Society for having us. Yeah.
Boy, was this a night of music. Thank you for this. Sometimes it's a party on this stage, and tonight is no exception to that. This was fun. Really well played. I don't know how else to say it. It was just so smart. It was just so smart. Thank you, gentlemen, for that. Clearly you came to do a job, but I think you just had fun instead. So I appreciate you for that, because I sure did myself. BJ, thank you for sending me such fine musicians week after week. Dominion Energy for putting some money in their pockets. Remember Tommy Productions for capturing, and to Chris for mixing the sounds. To those of you at home, you know what I'm going to say. Thank you for loving with us. Thank you for listening to us, and thank you for learning from us. In Richmond, Virginia, at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts from the Leslie Cheek Theater stage, this has been our virtual Dominion Energy Jazz Cafe. I'm Robert Fennard. Good night.